Naftali Bennett in Jerusalem. Welcome to Hard Talk.
Great to be here, Stephen.
Let's start with politics and personal ambition. It was a very interesting moment for you to decide to reveal to the Israeli public that you want to be Israel's next prime minister. It was hardly helpful to Mr. Netanyahu, was it?
Well, actually what I said was only after the Netanyahu era. I support Prime Minister Netanyahu's government. I'm part of his government. I think he's doing a good job, and I don't think that we need to hasten his departure from the Israeli leadership. I think when things are looking good, we need to keep it that way. But what I did say is that after the era of Netanyahu, yes, I do intend to become prime minister.
Yeah, well, that's a very polite and tactful answer, but let's be real about politics. Mr. Netanyahu is in a big mess right now. He's just had his 7th interview with anti-fraud investigators under caution. He may well be facing charges on 2 different matters of alleged scandal in the next few weeks. Your timing was quite deliberate, wasn't it? You, it seems, believe the Netanyahu era, as you put it, may well be coming to an end pretty soon.
No, I don't think so. I think, I know Mr. Netanyahu very well for over 12 years now. He's got strengths, he's got weaknesses, but he's not corrupt. He cares profoundly about Israel, works very hard for Israel. And while we have our disagreements, I think that the Prime Minister is doing a good job. He cares about Israel, and I'm here to support him.
It's not supportive, though, is it? Announcing that you want to be Israel's next Prime Minister when you know tens of thousands of Israelis are taking to the streets every Saturday night in Tel Aviv demanding that he go. You're simply adding to a sense that an end is coming quite soon for Mr. Netanyahu.
No, I don't think so, and I think the tens of thousands is a bit inflated. I think the overwhelming majority of those demonstrators are from the left and radical left side of the political map. It's legitimate. We're a free nation. You can demonstrate. But I don't think it's really about corruption. I think it's about politics, and they want to replace a good, strong right-wing government with a left-wing government, which again, it's legitimate, but it's not about corruption.
Well, unless you're saying the Israeli police, and in particular their crack anti-fraud division, are somehow political, then that statement just doesn't hold water, because we know the Prime Minister is suspected of, by this department, fraud, breach of trust, and accepting bribes.
Yeah, but we're only at the phase of investigation, and we know that about 80% of investigations end up without any charges being pressed, and certainly without conviction. So we're long, long away from any sort of thing like that. I think it would be wrong to accuse the Prime Minister of charges that have not even been sent to him. We're only at the investigation stage. It's a very early stage, and I hope for the state of Israel and for Prime Minister Netanyahu, for that matter, that it ends up with nothing.
Well, that's your hope. Let me quote to you a recent Channel 10 news report based on leaks from inside the investigation saying that police are expected to sum up their case in 2 weeks and to recommend that Netanyahu be indicted in both cases. Now, if he is indicted, do you believe he has to quit?
Well, Israel is a country with a rule of law, and we don't base our decisions on police recommendations. There's a legal structure where the Department of Justice needs to press charges against Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we're far away from that. I don't think that the fact that the police makes a recommendation should affect anyone. If indeed charges are pressed, that's a point where we'll have to look at things and make decisions.
What do you mean? You'll have to look at things and make decisions. Are you saying that if Netanyahu is charged, it's no longer tenable for him to be PM?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying precisely what I said. We'll have to make decisions based on the information then. How serious are the allegations? What is the general situation in Israel? You know, we're not living in Sweden. We're in Israel, surrounded by Hezbollah, Daesh, Hamas, Syria, Iran. So we can't afford to have that luxury of replacing prime ministers unless it's really, truly necessary. And I think we're far, far away from that. I think all the people who are, praying for that to happen should fold their prayer books and wait, because it's not happening anytime soon.
Yeah, but your contention that these people who are beginning to doubt that Netanyahu can carry on, your contention they're all leftists and, ideological opponents of Mr. Netanyahu and his government, that's simply not true, is it? Let me quote to you Nadav Haetzny. You probably know him well, right-wing attorney, commentator, publicist. He said the other day, Netanyahu's behavior is harming his camp. Every day now there is a bad smell coming from his office. It hurts the right.
We don't operate based on smells. We operate based on facts and a legal system, a good, solid legal system. Right now, all we have is investigations only. The haste to replace Netanyahu, I think, comes not so much from the deep desire to clean up corruption. Unfortunately, we've had corruption for the past 20 years. Every prime minister was investigated. We had Ehud Barak and Arik Sharon and Olmert, and now Netanyahu again. Most of the cases do not end up in court, and I hope this will be the case. I think that ultimately this will be the case here.
Just a final
point.
Sorry
to disappoint you.
Well, you're not disappointing me. I'm just wondering if you're going to end up disappointed, because the bottom line is this. You say you want to lead the right. Presumably, if you believe Netanyahu's era is coming to an end sometime soon, you want to take the right into the next election. You do not want the Israeli right to be tainted by sleaze. And right now, and again, I'm going to quote to you somebody widely respected on the nationalist right, that is Rabbi Yuval Cherlo. He actually went to the last big Tel Aviv street demo asking for Netanyahu to resign, and he said that the right should not force people to choose between their political point of view and backing a government that is leading a campaign against investigators and the free press. In the end, he says, people will choose their ethics and integrity over their political affiliation. That could be a big problem for you.
No, I agree that certainly this isn't helpful for the right wing in Israel. I get that. But having said that, I wouldn't take a fig leaf or so and consider that the whole right wing is now moving. We are against corruption. I will not take even a small rebate at a hotel, or, I don't want any presents or gifts from anyone, and that's been the way I've operated.
Yeah, but with respect, a lot of politicians say that. A lot of politicians say that, and then it turns out that, frankly, their integrity isn't quite as unimpeachable as they've claimed during a campaign.
Perhaps I'm fortunate to have sold 2 companies for $250 million before entering politics, so I don't need any money, and no one can come and bribe me because I'm self-sufficient. Whatever. The bottom line is that I think that we have a very good, solid government, growing economy, strengthening of our international relations. We do not want to give all this up and drag the country to unnecessary elections, and I think I stand strongly behind Prime Minister Netanyahu. We need this government to continue.
All right. Well, let's talk about diplomacy and regional politics then. Assuming Netanyahu does stay in for power for a deal longer, are you sure that the Israeli joy that we heard from the mouth of Mr. Netanyahu, and indeed from you yourself, the joy over Donald Trump's Jerusalem decision, are you sure it's not very premature and perhaps deeply misguided? Because while you've won a victory, you got what you wanted from Mr. Trump, it may well lead to very grave consequences, both in terms of instability in your relationship with the Palestinians and much more regional instability as well.
No, that's nonsense. The instability in the Middle East has nothing to do with Jerusalem or Israel for that matter. The instability, the source is internal Arab conflict between the Sunnites, the Shiites, between Iran, ISIS. Israel, if anything, is a source of stability, a pillar of stability in this very tumultuous region, and will remain so. So this was a very good move of the United States of America to recognize Jerusalem as our capital. I expect that the rest of the world will follow suit, if not in 7 days, 7 months, or 7 years. We've got patience. We've got 3,800 years worth of patience. We'll be able to wait a few more years.
Well, in a funny sort of way, Mr. Bennett, you know what? The decision made by Mr. Trump merely emphasizes just how strong the consensus internationally is against Jerusalem being recognized as Israel's capital right now. I could quote to you I don't have time to do it all, but I could quote you Pope Francis. I could quote you the UN Secretary General. I could quote you the leaders of Germany, France, the UK, the EU's foreign minister. All of these voices have been raised since Donald Trump's decision, making it clear that they think he is wrong.
Let me be clear. President Trump's recognition and the United States recognition of Jerusalem as our capital, that is not the source of Jerusalem being our capital. That's a given. Jerusalem is the Jewish capital much more, I'd say, than London is for British or Paris is for French. It's been that way long before Britain or France even came into existence. So we don't need to prove to anyone that our capital is Jerusalem. You know that, and everyone in the world knows that.
Yeah, listen, I'm not in the business of disputing that your Knesset's in Jerusalem, your Prime Minister's office is in Jerusalem, many of your ministerial offices are in Jerusalem. Of course, that is a fact. What is also a fact is that the international community, bar Donald Trump, insofar as we take this decision seriously, the international community still sees the whole issue of Jerusalem's future and sovereignty to be discussed as part of a peace settlement between you and the Palestinians.
I get it, but they're wrong. And no settlement, no peace settlement can be predicated on dividing up Jerusalem. There will never be peace based on a divided Jerusalem. In fact, the word Jerusalem in Hebrew, shalem, means whole. You cannot divide Jerusalem and expect good things to happen. So Jerusalem will remain unified under Israeli sovereignty forever. That's a fact.
But it isn't,
we can make progress
unified,
towards peace.
Mr. Bennett. Jerusalem isn't unified. And when you said recently, you know, in saluting the Trump decision, you said, for the past 25 years, we've been failing peace precisely because it's been predicated on putting fences in the heart of Jerusalem, and now that's not going to happen, and we can do peace. I mean, you're ignoring the reality that actually there is a wall, a fence, call it what you will, that runs through Jerusalem, built by your government, because you know, de facto, Jerusalem is still divided, and that 250,000 Arabs live in occupied East Jerusalem, and that they still insist East Jerusalem will one day be their eternal capital.
Well, you've got your facts wrong. I happen to work in Jerusalem every day, and I drive through the old city. There's no wall between West and East Jerusalem. There is no West and East Jerusalem. There just is Jerusalem. I can get out of this studio, get in a car, and drive directly to the Western Wall or Temple Mount. There's no fence or anything, so you have your facts wrong here.
I didn't couch my question in terms of the old city. You know as well as I do, there are many points in Jerusalem where you can go up to a great big wall. On one side is the Jewish residential area. On the other side is the Arab residential area. And if you don't call it a wall, you can call it a fence, call it what you like. But Jerusalem still has a divide.
No, that's the perimeter of Jerusalem, and that's not really the main issue. The main issue is the holy basin of Mount Scopus, Mount Olives, Temple Mount. If we come to an agreement and get the international consensus to be that it belongs to Israel, there's no problem. Even without that consensus, it belongs to Israel. But really, the big debate in the past was precisely regarding the holy basin. I'm happy we put that to rest.
Well, you can choose to view it that way. Of course, Arabs, many, you know, the 250,000 and more who live in the city simply refuse to recognize what you're talking about as a legitimate view of what East Jerusalem is. But it's interesting to me that you want to go much further. You want, it seems, according to the Greater Jerusalem legislation that you and others are pushing in the Israeli Knesset right now, it seems you want to transfer approximately 120,000 Palestinians who are currently regarded as legal residents of East Jerusalem. You want to push them outside the city by redefining Jerusalem's boundaries. Do you think that is going to be remotely acceptable to the international community?
We're talking about zoning. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, and no one moves anywhere. We're talking about municipal zoning.
Absolutely.
And I think
it's a question of what you define as Jerusalem.
Right, as the municipal boundaries. In fact, in a sense, what we're saying is that Jerusalem is Jerusalem, and then the outskirts are suburbs of Jerusalem, and they should get better service. But that's open for debate. I won't say that I'm fanatic about that particular bill. We'll learn it and make decisions based on it.
Ah, so you're backing off that idea, are you? Because, of course, for Arab people who currently have East Jerusalem residency and who would be taken into satellite suburbs which would no longer be part of Jerusalem, this is a fundamentally important matter.
Actually, for them, it would be a huge benefit because finally they'd get reasonable and good services better than they get today. It's a matter of municipal zoning, pretty boring topic, but if you want to talk about it, I'm willing to go on and explain the benefits of that move. I'm not backing off. We're still learning it at the government level, and we'll make the right and responsible decision here.
I just wonder, going back to Donald Trump and your pleasure at his decision, whether you are worried that the knock-on effect is that it will drive a wedge between you and, for example, Saudi Arabia and some of the more, quote-unquote, moderate Sunni nations in the Arab world, to whom you've been reaching out in the recent past, suggesting that there could be a de facto alliance formed against Iran. But now you've got the Saudis alongside the Egyptians and many others saying that this Jerusalem decision is absolutely unacceptable and that is now at the front and center of their regional policy.
Not at all. It's lip service, and they have to say that. But really, the Palestinian issue is a fake issue, just like the notion of a Palestinian state is a fake state. It's not a massive and central issue in the international or regional discourse. What everyone in this area cares about is how to block, how to check Iran from growing into a Shiite empire from Tehran all the way to the Middle East. That's what everyone in the region is thinking about. No one's talking about the Palestinians except for studios in London.
Well,
so it's really not a mainstream issue.
Yeah, luckily this broadcast will be seen by Arabs all over the Middle East and the wider Muslim community. So when the Saudis, for example, said after Trump's decision, quote, Trump's move constitutes a flagrant provocation for Muslims all over the world, you're simply saying, oh, that's fake, they don't mean it, it's just a charade. Is that what you're saying?
You know what, if they cared so much, Jordan occupied Jerusalem for 19 years. Why didn't they give it to the Palestinians?
You expect me to provide answers? The answers are coming from you and your government.
If they care so much about the Palestinians, then I would expect the Arabs to have given it to their brethren. In fact, no one in the Arab world ever accepted the notion of a Palestinian nation. They wouldn't grant them a state. We've granted them a state in Gaza. They turned it into Afghanistan in the heart of Israel. We're not about to make that mistake again.
Yeah.
They have a strong, powerful autonomy. They govern themselves. We're all content with that, and that's the way it's going to remain for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, you know, rather than ask me questions, it seems to me you need to face questions from the Israeli public. You're telling the Israeli public you want to be Israel's next prime minister, but if you're also telling the Israeli public, as indeed Israel's military chief appeared to be telling them recently in an interview with a Saudi newspaper, an unprecedented interview in which he was reaching out to the Saudis and saying there may even be intelligence sharing with Saudi Arabia to confront Iran, it seems to me you have to answer the basic question, is reviving the Jerusalem issue and telling the Saudis that they're simply fake and that they're conducting a charade, is that going to help you build an alliance with Saudi Arabia over Iran?
What helps us build alliances with nations around this region is their fear from Iran taking them over. Okay, that's the big fear, that's the big monster in the room, and everyone knows that Israel is the player, is the strongest player in the region, that they need Israel to stop Iran from its expansion. I'm not talking about Saudi Arabia, I'm talking about everyone. In fact, the whole West knows it. The West knows something else. The West knows that we're the ones blocking radical Islam from flowing into Europe. It's because of us that rivers of terror are not flowing into Europe. Take a map, you'll see, put a line between Iran and the radical Islam and Europe, you'll see Israel blocking that because we're the forefront against terror. If we weren't here, you'd have rivers of terror flood London and France and all around.
Mr. Bennett,
I'd expect that Europe would back us in our battle against terror.
I just wonder whether you might be misreading Europe, Mr. Bennett, because I see one of your ministerial colleagues, the intelligence minister Israel Katz, said the other day that Israel is prepared to bomb Lebanon to the Stone Age in its pursuit of Hezbollah. Do you really think that that sort of language wins you friends in Europe?
Look, I assume that what Minister Katz was referring to is if Lebanon shoots thousands of rockets on Israel, clearly we will retaliate. The way to buy friends in this very cruel world is to be strong. You know, being nice doesn't gain you sympathy. We were nice 75 years ago, but we were butchered. We're not going to go down that path again. We need to be strong. We're a vibrant democracy, and whether Europe likes us or not, that's Europe's business. We're not going to be the conscience-cleansing entity for Europe.
So
We've got a country to run, and we need to be strong here, and we will remain strong.
So as a senior member in the government, a member of Netanyahu's security cabinet, a man who wants to be the next prime minister of Israel, you're suggesting to me that you, as a leading Israeli voice, believe that it would be, what, sensible, wise, responsible for Israel to consider bombing Lebanon to the Stone Age in response to what you see as Hezbollah's threat coming from Lebanon?
Yeah, precisely what you guys did in Dresden when Germany bombed London, you bombed Dresden back to the Stone Age. So if Lebanon shoots tens of thousands of missiles on my mom's home up in Haifa or in Tel Aviv or in Ra'anana where I live, yeah, definitely we will retaliate. I think anyone with common sense would do that, and we do it strong. Hopefully we won't reach that because Lebanon realizes that it's not worth their while. Look, I want to be clear. We're not looking for any conflict. We're happy and content with things as they are. It's Iran who's trying to surround us with proxies,
hang on.
and we're not going to initiate any conflict.
You said not so long ago, I think a few days ago, my approach is to hold Iran itself more and more accountable for its actions. So what are we to expect in the coming weeks, months? Are we to expect a direct military confrontation between Israel and Iran?
No, that's not necessary. What I'm saying is that we have a big bully in the region called Iran. It's sending its tentacles all around us, in Gaza through Hamas, in Lebanon through Hezbollah, and in Syria through its proxies. You know, Khamenei is very tough. He's willing to kill others to fight Israel. He's willing to shed blood of Lebanese and Syrians and Gazans, everything but Iranians. My point is that gradually we need to hold Iran accountable for this ongoing proxy war against Israel, and we will.
All right. Well, Naftali Bennett, we're out of time, but I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk from Jerusalem.
Thank you very much.